So over lunch, I was approached by my general counsel that we have Ed Power, who would like to address the board to ask to waive the process that we just approved in order to have a decision today. So I'm going to ask Ed Power, representative, to come to the podium, and it will take, as he comes, and we listen to him for a moment, we have to have 3 people and myself put it on the agenda because we've already taken action on it. So do we want to hear first from them and then put it on the agenda, or do we want to go ahead and put it on the agenda and then hear from him?
I mean, just to expedite, I move we put it on the agenda.
Do I have 3 people who want to put it on the agenda, and then myself? All right, we're going to put it back on the agenda. So Ed Power, if you would address the podium, and after they give comment, then we're going to have to vote whether we're waiving the process we just approved and make a decision today. Okay, thank you. Marcus, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good afternoon. We appreciate your indulgence. This is an urgent matter. To answer an early question, we are in the process of making sure that we're completely staffed and ready to serve the students at Arlington High School. As we intimated in our letter, we have, through this process, learned a number of great lessons. And one of the best lessons is that if you apply sound instructional practice and great instructional systems, all kids can learn, even if they've been in a troubled school situation. And we've seen some great outcomes. The other lesson that we've learned is Arlington is not just a collection of bodies. It is an institution that not only belongs to a group of kids, but it belongs to a community. I've been in this sector of the city for more than a decade, as Ms. Neal clearly knows. Tinley is about 5 minutes from the Arlington property. And I know what Arlington means to all of us who live in that sector of the city, who own homes in that sector of the city, all the folks who have been alumni of that great institution. It's important to Indianapolis. But it is a big facility, 380,000 square feet of space. We've talked to the board on occasion about how difficult it is to maintain safety in such a large space, especially given some of the community issues that might bubble up and bubble over onto the campus. It is a very large facility. As I think we've laid out, that operation costs us just over $1 million, and that's not educating kids, that's not books or supplies, that is utilities, $568,000. That's cleaning 380,000 square feet, $420 some odd thousand dollars. And those costs go on. And unfortunately, the way the reform was constructed, those costs fall on the turnaround school operator and not on the district. And so a piece of that $7,000 per student that we receive to educate has to be spent, I think, unnecessarily in a direction. And so we have about 400 and some odd students that we serve this year. And I guess we've just come to say that we were certainly disappointed with the reduction in SIG funding, the money that we receive as a fee to provide management services. But even more than that, we're concerned about the operational paradigm, that there are just too few kids to support such a large facility and such a large property. Tennis courts that our kids by and large don't use, a football stadium where there is no football program because there aren't enough kids to be able to support such infrastructure. And so we've come not necessarily for a paycheck, but a partnership. That's why I raised the issue today, because I hope that what we're working on is a far easier consideration than where you're going to find, $300 additional $1,000 in SIG funding. Through conversations with CECI, the mayor's office, and IPS, we've been working on a different operational paradigm. If the scores were not embargoed, I would certainly begin to speak to the kind of progress that we've seen in Arlington. Certainly high school has been of a tough nut to crack, but when you look at the middle school performance on I-STEP, those kids have done remarkably well. And again, once those scores are available, they're probably available to you, even while they're under embargo. I think you'll see dramatic things are happening. Beyond academics, the great cultural strides that have been made. If you haven't had an opportunity to visit, we encourage you to be a part of the Arlington milieu on a day-to-day basis. Some great things are happening at Arlington. We promised this community, all of us together, the previous administration, the State Board of Education, and our organization, that if we turn the school around, that our intent was not to deprive the folks of the community of their school, for which they're still on the hook about $20 million in a renovation. But we will return that school to operations with the district. And so the relief that we hope to receive, frankly, is that this board would support us in partnership as we work on a transition year of the operation from Tinley Accelerated Schools to the Indianapolis Public School System. Our hope would be not just to figure out how we switch out keys and how we count books, but to really talk about what are the administrative, operational, and instructional paradigms that we can pass on in partnership. How can we grow together? In my estimation, and I've been studying this turnaround for about 5 years, since we were first approached by the department to consider becoming a turnaround school operator, this is an unprecedented paradigm where we actually get to a point where we start making transitions and everybody works in partnership to make that happen. I believe if we can do that, IPS will be the kind of partner that will help us with finding efficiencies in the operational model. It is their building. They know how it works. They know how to run it cheaper than we do. And we've even proposed some in-kind services as we do a transition. At the end of the day, if we can't serve the kids because we can't afford to serve the kids, they'll go back to IPS. And the building and all of its debt goes back to IPS. And so I don't think that should happen by default. I think that should happen intentionally. It's the right thing to do for these kids and for that community. And so our hope is to receive an endorsement from the state board relative to that kind of transition planning. Let's do it in a way that we didn't get to do the first time. When we took over, there was no handoff, there was no transition, there was no partnership. And I think we have a rich opportunity with the new administration.
So I want to ask you, Marcus, what is it that you're asking of the board?
I'm asking the board to support a transition between Tinley Accelerated Schools and Indianapolis Public Schools to exist for this school year with the operation of the school to return to Indianapolis Public Schools in the fall of 15.
And so you're not asking for funds from the board?
I believe if we can get this transition plan mounted, Madam Chairwoman, that we can find a way working together between Tinley and IPS to defray some of those costs, those operational costs that have been so onerous, and we can get through this school year on a transition.
Okay. So, because we felt we were dealing with the matter of actually...
Of the SIG funding, yes, ma'am.
That was in the letter of the petition.
And ECI has made it very clear that they have turned over every stone, they have looked in every coffer, and there is not a nickel to be had. And so when that happened, we did not take our ball and go home. We did not exercise our right to terminate. We got busy. And frankly, if it hadn't been for the superintendent stepping up and saying, how can I help? He went himself directly to the Tinley Board of Directors and said, I want to be a partner with you. Tell me how I can be helpful in making some things happen. Then we wouldn't be where we are. And so 2 months ago, we wanted money and lots of it, as you can see from my letter. Right now, what we want is some support on an operational paradigm that's not just good for the kids at Arlington, but I think it's good for our state in terms of giving us a different way of thinking about how we work with these schools.
So I just want to clarify, because in a moment we're going to do some kind of voting.
Sure.
So to just throw out a possible motion of what we might be doing.
I have some questions to Marcus
Yeah,
before the motion.
yeah, I know you do. I'm not going to make a motion now.
Good.
I just want to make sure that I get the gist of what we're doing here.
Yes, ma'am.
So we would not be voting to issue money but you and IPS have worked out an arrangement on how to operate this year.
We are working on
This
that,
coming
yes.
school year.
Evan Hawkins, our Chief Operating Officer, has been working with the Deputy Superintendent, Scott Martin, to try to find those efficiencies, cut those operational costs to make it work for this year. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Sarah and then Dan.
I just need some guidance. I'm not sure exactly where it was, if it was in statute or rule or initial waiver in 2012, but somewhere we had set out guidelines by which the schools could actually go back to their home district, in this case, obviously IPS. So I need a little more information on what criteria has to be met before we can even consider this particular school, Arlington, being released back to IPS. I thought that something had to change
Now,
in terms of.
I'm not getting the impression you're releasing, that's what we're talking about today.
He had said partnership this year, releasing to fall of 2015.
That's right.
And that may be at the end of their contract. And I know we have to deal with what are we gonna do when all of these contracts are up. But
Well, with all due
But
respect,
as I
Madam Chairwoman,
understand it, you're
would
gonna be
terminate our
operating
contract
this
a year early. And so it would mean that we would not be serving in the 15-16 school year.
okay,
It does mean that, yes.
all right.
And to Ms. O'Brien's point, that
Wait
that
just a
provision is
minute,
not in
Brad.
statute. And
It's
so
not in statute?
It's not. And so the state
No.
board certainly can, at its pleasure, decide that it wants to take a different path.
Is it in our current waiver?
What? About,
Regarding
No.
turnaround, that it would have to, I thought that there was something in place to where the status of the school had to change to a certain level before we it looks like Bob has feedback on that.
go ahead, well,
In the original waiver of 2012 on page 270.
Bob, it would be best if you use the mic, please.
is Teresa is my assistant superintendent in the room? No, okay.
In the original waiver of 2012, on page 272, it says, "For a turnaround academy to rejoin the LEA, the SBOE will need to see that the LEA has, in the time that the turnaround academy has been operated by a TSO, demonstrated significant improvement in its other priority and focus schools, as well as made appropriate district-level changes in staffing and structure to better support its low-performing schools."
Okay. Mr. Robinson?
Yes, sir.
I don't know, it's just general, I mean, it's not,
Thank you. One of the things, reason I was trying to get your attention to speak, I wanted to know, at the end of the day, I wanted to know what day you had envisioned. So the day would be really the end of next academic year.
Yes, sir.
And I want to thank you for creativity and working with IPS, and Dr. Farabee was here.
He was.
I want to thank him for working. Sounds like you're getting this year figured out, you're going to be ready to go.
Yeah, I would say if we can get support from the state board, we believe we have a plan that can really work this year.
Well, I won't speak for the whole board, but I'm very thankful, frankly, that you've worked out this year, because I think a quick change would be very detrimental. And I'm very thankful that the IPS folks are working with you to make this year work. The thing I would like to do, and I thought we had some language, appreciate it, Bob. We need some time. Matter of fact, we're gonna vote on a resolution about a task force. We learned a lot in this process. This board, and I was on it, and a few others that were that task force, when we went through this process, and we've learned a lot. We can do a lot of things better now that we've learned. We learned that you just can't leave failing schools fail and not do something.
Mhm.
So we appreciate your hard work there and your team's hard work. But in terms of absolutely ironclad say, well, in so many months, it's going back just like this, we couldn't do that today. I don't think. I shouldn't speak for Dan Elsner. But we could very much embrace the direction you're going with this task force. Honest, open negotiation. What is the best way? Where do we want Arlington to be? But have that be a little more thorough. Make sure the board knows exactly what it's voting on. And we'd be very, I say we, this board member would be very interested in that. And we would, incorporate it in our general understanding of how do you get these schools back that were chronically failing to the district? That was always the goal.
Sure.
Under what terms? And how do you do that transition in a way that it didn't happen like it happened to you? That was a very difficult time. So,
Sure.
I very much appreciate what you're bringing to us today. And I'd be very committed to working very hard at it for this board member. I think the rest of the board would agree. Exactly how that goes back, under what conditions, processes, governance, et cetera. I think we ought to think that through a little bit with you and with Dr. Farabee, because that
Well,
would be a rash decision.
I think the challenge, Dan, honestly, is we've run out of time. And so
Well, if you
I think we have to have a plan that not only the board can support, the state board can support, but it has to be a plan that the Tinley board can support, that the IPS Board of Commissioners can support. And we're talking about everybody signing on before kids walk in on August the 11th.
Oh.
The urgency that I feel is absolutely phenomenal. The commitments that we've made are serious. And if we can't get operational relief, and to this point, the school district has been the only entity to step up to say, yeah, we recognize that problem. We think we have some
Right.
solutions that we can put forward. If we can't get operational relief, then I can tell you very clearly that the Tinley board is just not in the financial position to take that large
But
of a
I hear
hit.
you have that, you're working that out for this year. So we endorse that.
Well, but I'd go further and say that the district is looking for some intimation about the transition. Why would they want to invest thousands of dollars in district resources beyond the 1.7 that has already been allocated out of their budget if there is no clarity relative to what is going to happen on the back end? I appreciate that the board would like some time for deliberation, but in all honesty, we're in a crisis. And so I would just hope that the state board would hear that crisis because we're on a path. It is a good path, but unfortunately, we don't have a long runway.
Let me just make it clear, and then I'm gonna leave the stage here,
Yes, sir.
because I see someone else signed up. The decision to work together to operate it this year, this board member very much appreciates, because these young people, we made a commitment, it follows through.
Sure.
Then we can make a commitment to figure out where we go next and do it in a logical, thorough way that we know what we're committing to, and we are committed to that. But suddenly today, just say, without any review, understand how it goes back, just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But so I'm with you, and I think we can get everything we need accomplished, frankly. But I don't know that we can vote on that. So those were my questions. Thank you.
So I need to clarify.
Yes, ma'am.
So IPS is willing to invest in this year in helping?
I don't know that, because IPS honestly has been getting mixed signals about what can be supported from the state. And so we're not just talking about something that's new and different for us and new and different for the State Board of Education, it's also new and different for them. And so I cannot speak for the superintendent, but were I in his chair, I would say to you unequivocally, there's no way I'm putting my team in that building when there isn't some clarity about what is going to happen after this school year.
So are you asking this board for its support as you go forward in working with IPS to have closure, transition for this year?
Not just a bridge
and,
for this year.
and going forward?
Yes, ma'am.
Because IPS is wanting to see that kind of commitment
Yes,
as
ma'am.
they put in the funds to run Arlington.
Yes, ma'am. And again, we're not necessarily talking about funds, we're talking about in-kind services. And so.
So that's such a different concept in the petition that we were supposed to vote
That's right.
on.
That's right.
Sarah?
Like Dan said, I agree that this is absolutely the route that I would like to take. My hesitation is that we're being asked to vote on a partnership that may or may not exist at this point. For clarification, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding
Sure.
properly. Is it accurate to state that if we do not at this point approve, excuse me, transition back to IPS in 15, that Tinley is not prepared to maintain their contract? Is that accurate at this point?
That's accurate, because we can't afford it. We love the kids, we love the space, but it is incredibly expensive. And so the debt relief, the budget relief that we need. In the last 3 or 4 months, we've only found from one source. And so I'm not saying that commitment has to be today, but certainly before we restart operations with kids in a few weeks, we would have to reach some conclusion.
All right, Tony? Is that Tony?
Okay, Marcus, I just want to be clear, I'm hearing you correctly. Are you saying that if this partnership does not go forward beginning immediately for 2014-15 school year, that you and your company cannot deliver on the contract for the next school year?
I'm saying to you, I think as clearly as I can, the district has an interest that they've made clear as a condition of their participation. If we can't get that, Tinley cannot afford to operate Arlington. I'm not posturing here. I'm telling you we're a small nonprofit, a small local nonprofit that came to do a service. You can check our checkbook. We don't have any money. And so if I could prop up Arlington, Tony, I certainly would. But we're just not in that position. If we go back to Arlington, without this partnership.
Is your intention not to go forward on the contract unless you have this partnership in place pretty quickly?
Yes, that's the only route we found. Now, honestly, we're open to creativity. If you've got a different route, then we'd love to hear it. But we've been working at this for quite some time.
It would have
How
been
long-
nice if
how
this
long-
partnership was
Yeah, I
settled
think
before this
poses
meeting.
A serious question for the board. Clearly, there's nothing that can be done today to act on this. But I think what it does do is open up all the tools in the toolbox for the board in order to take a look at what needs to happen with Arlington. And I'm talking about ranging from closing the school down to amending the contract we already have to include one of the other operators taking over Arlington. I think everything has to be on the table now, and we probably need to get moving immediately under the representation that was just made that there will be an anticipatory breach.
How long has dialogue been going on with IPS regarding this?
We first talked to IPS in May when there was a different solution on the table. There was no support for that different solution, and so it evaporated and went away. And so this conversation has only emerged in the last 3 weeks. And as you might imagine, there is a new administration in IPS, and they are doing their level best to get up to speed and do all their due diligence. Nobody's dragging their feet. There are a lot of meetings and a lot of papers going back and forth. I think we can get this tied up really quickly. The only thing that's hanging in the distance is we need some commitment from this body.
What parties have been at the meetings?
IPS, Tinley, the Office of the Mayor, CECI.
So that's probably why I'm not aware, because the department wasn't involved. Okay. Andrea?
I agree with Tony that we can't take action today without hearing from the mayor's office, from IPS, and more fully understanding this model that you're suggesting of a transitional year, preparing IPS to resume control of Arlington High School. And I think that the outcome would be desired by everyone. But if would you move forward if the board had a agreement with the concept, if not an official vote on the arrangement, because the details would need to be made clearer, I think, before I could vote on it.
Sure. We're prepared to move forward. I don't know where the district would be. I can't make a commitment for them. They were here this morning, and I was hopeful that we'd get to have this conversation then with them present, but that didn't happen. And so I'm happy to call the superintendent and see if we can get back together. I don't know if you guys want to do a special meeting to have consideration on this particular topic, but we can put together an MOU, show you all the logistics and how it would go down. I'm sure the mayor's office would be in support because they want to see those kids served well. They want to see that community with the school open. And so I think there's alignment, and I think we can get a clear path articulated to you just as quickly as you're prepared to come together and have the conversation.
Marcus? Oh, David, you were gonna.
Your petition today dealt with the reduction in monies, and so that's what we were going to act on. So based
Surely.
on what you're saying, you're withdrawing your petition that you submitted to us. Is that correct?
We're not.
You're not withdrawing the petition?
We're not. We have an operational deficit, and that's still true today. We can withdraw the petition if we find some budget relief, and that's what I'm here to talk about. There's a way to do it without taxing the state any further. There's a way to get it done without having a ripple implication for other turnaround school operators based on commitments that the state has already made. So we're not in a position to pull our petition until we've dealt with the operational deficit.
Is your running of the school this next academic year contingent upon us agreeing that the school for the following academic year be turned over to IPS? That's what I hear you saying is,
I would
is you
imagine-
will run the school this year if we agree now to turn it over to IPS the following year.
I think that's crucial.
So that's what you're asking for.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Those two things
Yes.
aren't related.
Yeah, they're not related. They're
That's a different
unrelated.
They are.
decision.
But they are.
That's you can't hold the young people you committed to serve hostage to that agreement on an instant. So what I heard you when you started, this has changed a little. When you started, we have a way to figure out how to serve these young people.
Yes.
And IPS is gonna help you with operational expenses, then we'll do something different next year, but it gives everybody some runway to do it well. And so that's something we could support, I'm sure. But the other decision of where it goes, you know, you have to have a full review of, and this board's been very supportive of Dr. Farabee out of the gate, so it has nothing to do with that. But getting up to speed, I think maybe is a term used. There's various ways, another charter to run it, a charter under IPS, the new law to run it, close it, probably least attractive. But this year, we have a commitment to 300 and some students, I understand. And I wanted to hear that you were gonna go ahead and do that, and then we'll take time to figure that out. Because the one decision is a commitment to fulfill. The other one's one to figure out, and we're committed to figuring that out with you, but you can't, and I did know the mayor's education deputy is here, we could hear from him, but I just think that's just, those two things are related, but they're not dependent.
Well, I've been in the educational operator in this community for better part of the last decade. And I can tell you that the business model does not work such that any operator worth their salt would be prepared to come in and take over this turnaround school operator unless we could provide some ceiling, some floor in terms of student enrollment, which drives revenue. We knew this was going to be a problem. We talked about it very openly. And that's how we got to the provision, David, that there was this circuit breaker based on the SIG funding. It was a way, an enticement from the last administration to get the turnaround school operators to sign the contract. If this goes south financially, you guys get to walk with 60 days notice. And so it went south a long time ago. And instead of us saying, okay, circuit breaker is there, we don't care, we're out of here, we've done our level best. We reorganized SIG funds for this school year to make some things work. And when we took a look at next year's budget, I can tell you operationally it's bloody because of the way we fund schools. This is not about lack of commitment, folks. This is a bad business paradigm. And if what we are going to wait for is somebody else to come in and pick up a bad business model, then that's a waste of time. And there's no way under code to leverage the school district in a 1321 operation. We'd have to go back to the legislature and give this board the power to say the school only goes back under this condition. We have a route to save the school. If Tinley's not operating at Arlington, those kids go back into the system anyway. This is the right thing to do. And it's your back is up against the wall. I apologize for that, but my back is up against the wall. I serve all of those kids on Arlington Avenue, but I've got 1,200 other kids across my network that I serve as well. And if I take this financial hit, then I have to stop serving those kids as well. The implications for me, not so much. I got a job, I got a great track record, I got an education, I got credentials. I'll live. But I can tell you the education that we're providing for over 1,500 kids in Northeast Indianapolis cannot be put in peril, not when we have a route to make this work. And so we've talked it out, guys, and I apologize that that talk has not bubbled up to this body,
it hasn't.
because
Well,
it is not a new conversation.
Can I interject? I mean, it seems to me like you're proposing a solution, but there's a whole lot of loose ends. And it puts us in a very difficult position, sitting here today, we want to help,
Sure.
you know?
If we
but
can commit
but you
to
don't
getting
have an
back
agreement
together.
with IPS. You have discussions, and IPS isn't here to speak to that. But how are we supposed to act? I mean, what are we supposed to do here?
My
with,
recommend-
you telling us you're done no matter what, unless you can get this agreement.
My
worked out with
recommendation,
IPS.
Gordon, would be for us to set a time to get back together very soon, to consider the memorandum, and you vote it up or down. I think that's the right thing to do. Puts everybody in the right space. You have all the information that you need. We have all the parties at the table intentionally, the DOE, the mayor's office, CECI, Tinley, to talk about what are the implications going forward, backward and forward.
So
But
my,
if I'm wrong, I'm
can I-
willing to
can
be
I
wrong.
continue?
yeah, go ahead, Gordon.
This board is saying today, conceptually, we approve with your go-forward strategy, okay?
Well, I'm
So
not
what's-
sure we've said that, but.
Well, maybe I'm just hearing, I'm speaking for myself
Sure.
and maybe Dan, but if we were to conceptually approve with your go-forward strategy
Sure.
today, and you were to work out an agreement with IPS,
Yes.
then before your school opens on August 11th, we have a board meeting that we could approve that path going forward. So wouldn't that be your recommended course?
That would absolutely work for us.
So let's do it.
So say that again, Gordon. So say it again. We have an August 6th meeting,
Right.
so say it again.
So I think we can, I think we would approve in concept what they're proposing, assuming, under the assumption that there can be a mutually agreeable contract or agreement with IPS.
We can pull together an
And then
MOU,
you can
we
come
can
back
float
at
it
our
to you
next
in
board
advance, we
meeting,
can
and
discuss it.
we can potentially approve it.
The only thing you better be clear on the backside, I don't know there's agreement on the backside that right now we would just say, okay, you guys operate for a year.
Right, right,
Mr. Robinson,
right.
Ed Power, I'd be more formal. And IPS gonna support you in some ways, taking care of the building. And then it's just gonna go back as it was 2 or 3 years ago
Absolutely.
without doing evaluation. See, that would be hard to make a commitment to today.
But I think
Right.
that's
Even August
the flaw in the
11th.
logic.
So what
To suggest,
back
there's just no way, having watched these folks operate, that anybody worth their salt could ever watch that building go back to what it was. And so, we're making it happen on a shoestring. I'm here to tell you that that building had $12 million in revenue before we walked into it with 7 administrators. And none of those people are currently on the leadership team. And so, we've got a different group and a different opportunity to make a difference. And here's something that has never happened. I've been in this business 10 years in this community. I run A schools. And I will tell you, in 10 years, we have never had one single solitary visit from an IPS principal. We've never had one indication from the district that they wanted to sit down with us and partner on our systems, our operations, the way we do business. This is a whole different kind of commitment. And I feel like if we let the window close on this opportunity, it may not reopen for a while.
Is that Tony or?
Superintendent,
Yes, Brad?
I just want to make a quick comment. I find this conversation somewhat frustrating in that the comment keeps being made about trying to make it happen on a shoestring budget. There are schools all over Indiana doing that, and they're committed to showing up on the first day of school. I think Gordon's proposed idea is reasonable and sound for the reasons given by my colleagues. I don't know if we're at a place where we can entertain a motion to take that conceptual idea and put it together, but I would just ask that in the future, this is not the first time Ed Power has been in front of the board, but when a TSO is coming in and at this point it's now a crisis, I'm wondering why we haven't heard a part of this as we've had updates in
front of the board on the academic performance of the schools. I think the financial part of it needs to be out in front of us as well.
BJ?
I guess my concern, and again, I support in theory the combination of the two, but I'm not even sure, and I like where Gordon's headed, but I'm not even sure by August if one, we'll be able to assess IPS's willingness to do it or readiness to do it. I mean, I'm not sure we'll know in 30 days, one, if they're willing to do it, and two, if they can handle it. Well, I think that's seems to be the only solution, is working towards that. I have trouble saying today, yes, we're going to do it, we're going to look over to IPS in 2015. There's got to be some way where we can say, yes, we want to move towards this, but we have to do our due diligence, however long it takes. Getting it right is more important than getting it right now.
Well, and I just think you've got some work to do, you know, to settle things with IPS, and then I think during the same time we can consider, you know, and hear from IPS as to their willingness and readiness.
And maybe in 30 days it can be done. It just seems.
Well, we're going to need to make some formalization to this. I don't think we should just say, hey, go back and work it out. I think the board staff and the department staff, which have not been involved in this and have the contract, obviously should be involved.
Yes.
And there should be a formalized process by which this occurs. It troubles me greatly that we're hearing about these things and the department has not been involved. So
Who holds the contract?
I'm
May I ask
concerned
the
about
staff?
that.
The department holds the contract. I mean, we're a party. That's why we're standing up here.
Well, I just want to clarify that the superintendent actually received a phone call from Dr. Farapy, and they actually spoke about it, which he told us about, and the mayor's office has
Regarding
the statutory
what?
authority to oversee the school, and we were invited to conversations after multiple conversations had occurred. So I just want to clarify, and I've been updating Craig Hertzer, the chief of staff, about the conversations we've had. So I just want to set the record straight there.
May we hear from the mayor's office? while we're
So Claire, and so Cece's been doing an update. Where's the involvement of the department? And I've had no conversation with Dr. Farabee regarding anything that Marcus has said today. I just want to make sure that everybody's clear about that. I have not spoken to him regarding any of those things Marcus has said.
Well, I can only repeat to you what Dr. Farabee said to me, was that he'd had a conversation with you about options for the school turning back to IPS, and that was after apparently Dr. Farabee went to speak with the Ed Power board to talk about options for the school. So that all happened before I was made aware of the
I have not
situation,
heard
so.
anything that Marcus said today.
Okay. Well, we
who
have to ask
has?
Dr. Farabee.
Yeah. Have we talked to the mayor's office yet?
Superintendent, if I may, there's a procedural matter I'd
Yes,
like to
go
raise as
ahead,
party to
Bernice.
the contract. I mean, we
I have a question when we get a chance.
Go ahead, Bernice.
from a procedural point of view, from the department's angle, when we're a party to this matter, the Ed Power has made a petition, and it's for the board to decide. And so that's the action that I was prepared to go forward on. And as I read the contract, the board's role, and I'm not speaking about any of the things that were just discussed, I'm completely caught out of left field on that conversation, but in terms of going forward with this petition, I think the board needs to be clear what is happening with this petition. I don't know if the petitioners are wanting to table it and bring it up later. If they do want to bring it up later, we still have other schools who are not getting their SIG funding while this matter is resolved. So I want to be clear on what's happening with the petition. So I'm not trying to get into any of that stuff, but I just need to know from the department angle what's happening with the petition.
Thank you. My name is Jimmy McMillan. I'm counsel for Charles Tinley, known as the contractor as Ed Power. What we're trying, I believe what Marcus is trying to convey is that we have not withdrawn our petition for relief because we still have a budget gap and we still have a budget shortfall. So the petition is still on the table. What we have been told, we've been dealing with this issue directly in conversations with the mayor's office, CECI. What we have been told repeatedly through various attempts to come up with a resolution is that there are no funds available, that there is no money available, whether we have a process, a procedure, whether we bring forth all of our numbers and show step by step how we got to this shortfall. And at the end of the day, there will be no funds available to provide an actual dollar value relief for this problem. We have tried to craft various solutions to avoid the nuclear option of termination. No one wants these kids to not be served in the coming school year. Certainly, the contract provides the right to terminate. It doesn't provide that you have to deny the relief. It just says you don't have to grant it. And we presented our petition for relief before the prior board meeting. This petition was not heard. It is now 2 board meetings, and we still now are being pushed down the road, and it's going to put us in an untenable position where we're forced to terminate for lack of funding, as this contract was written and envisioned to do. Contract clearly says in various places that time is of the essence. And we are now at a point where we've been brought before the state board, and we are still coming with another solution that attempts to avoid termination. Again, there is Dr. Furby was here earlier. I believe he thought that this issue was going to come up early, and it did not, so he left. But if there's a possibility of doing anything that would bring this matter would help us to collaborate on this solution, the only solution that has been brought forth to date, that would avoid some of the triggering mechanisms that are in the contract, I think that would be helpful. So when you're talking about considering the petition for the relief, yes, we are considering the same petition that we put forth. We're just trying to offer an alternative solution to get to the number that's stated in the petition. This is the only solution in terms of numbers and in-kind services that is on the table right now to make up for a gap that nobody else seems to have a plan that is agreeable to take care of.
So I think the motion is to get the parties together and to try to get a workable solution for Tinley to operate the school next year. Is that what I hear the motion is?
Is it possible for the mayor's office to
Oh,
weigh in, Madam
I
Superintendent?
didn't see you up there. Oh, Tony, I'll go ahead, Tony, and then the mayor's office is going to speak.
So thank you very
Okay,
much.
great. I just want to address the suggestion that somehow the turnaround contract or the turnaround process guaranteed an amount of funding for the operators. That is not true. There was never an amount guaranteed. I mean, that was part of the risk that the operators undertook. And a big part of that is the responsibility of the operator to actually market and promote itself and get bodies in those schools. Now, I don't know what the population numbers, the enrollment numbers are for Arlington now. But if there is somehow decreased funding, that has to be part of the evaluation. And the part of the responsibility that goes to getting bodies in the seats goes back to the operator, not to the board. I mean, what we were creating here was an opportunity to, I think, develop competition for private operators, nonprofit operators, to come in and try to do a better job on a level playing field. That did not mean that they were going to be subsidized, and it didn't mean that they didn't have to compete for students like everyone else. So if we run into a situation where an operator has had dwindling enrollment, then that is, part of the responsibility of the operator. That is not the fault of the board. There's nothing guaranteed. And to the extent that this experiment has failed at Arlington, and that's what it sounds like, that's partly because they have not put forward a product that attracted kids to that school. Thank you.
And with all due respect, Madam Chairwoman, we were not hired to compete with the school district. We actually made it clear at a State Board of Education meeting that they have dedicated funds for enrollment and recruitment, and they hold all the cards. They have every name and address of every kid we have ever served. And so under the circumstances, we made it clear not just to the board, but to the department, we will serve the kids who are in the building. We had grave concerns about what we were seeing, not what we suspected, but what we were seeing actually transpiring in the school as the previous school administration was moving kids out by the boatload to other schools during the operational year, pulling them out of class, enrolling them in different schools. Kids showing up at second semester, finding out they had been ported to a different school. We were very transparent about that. And so when we got from the operational year to observation year to the operational year, everyone was concerned about it. I know I was, I know John Hage was, right? And the way folks the department tried to make it palatable was they put this relief clause in that says, hey, We know you're concerned about funding, and we're acknowledging it. On the backside of the election, we'll fix it. Well, the voters had a different viewpoint. And so under the circumstance, the thing that we articulated to everyone at the table would happen, did happen, and there's never been a fix. I'm not blaming anybody for that. I'm not saying that's the state board's responsibility. The flaw is not in the state board decision. The flaw is how the legislation was crafted. We shouldn't have taken over a building. We should have taken over a student population. And we should have managed how those kids move back and forth. But the die is already cast as far as that is concerned. We have been working for months to say, we want to go back to Arlington, we want to make this work. And I'm here to say, I need your assistance. Gordon, I agreed. I would wait till the next board meeting, but that was before I found out from the department I'd be holding up everybody's sick funding. And so I don't want to do that. I think we have to make whatever decision we need to make in fairly short order. I don't know if that means a special board meeting where we get an opportunity to put the MOU together and come back and talk to you guys. But I'd be very uncomfortable holding up all the other kids around the state to August 6th.
All right, so the mayor's office. Thank you. Thank you, Marcus.
So thank you for the opportunity to speak. So as I was listening to the possible board item to address this at the next board meeting, my concern would be that as of August 6th, we're so close to the start of the school year,
Yes.
that they couldn't possibly staff the school effectively and manage the operations in the way that we would hope to see to the benefit of the students. And so if I may, I might propose that there be a opportunity for Tinley, the DOE, CECI, the mayor's office, and maybe representatives of the board to over the next week have a meeting, discuss what it would look like for IPS to partner with Tinley, put that into more concrete terms so that the board can consider it in a special meeting, have a discussion about what that transition might look like, but to make sure that that transition was designed in a way that it would give the board confidence and the mayor confidence that the school would not transition back to the levels of performance that had existed for the previous decade, and that we come to some collective resolution if the board would consider that as an option. Thank you.
Are you requesting also that then there be a special meeting, or is the August 6th time agreeable to get this completed?
My fear would just simply be that if Tinley was, or the operator, in this case Tinley, was unable to know whether or not they would have the financial capacity to operate the school, it would be difficult for them to staff and hire the administrators and teachers and operate the school if they had to wait that long.
It seems,
And it encumbers everybody else's seat.
and it seems to me like we have two pieces that you're wanting. A yes or no vote on the petition, so that you know where you stand regarding the State Board of Ed and its funding, okay? And that you also then, and then a second motion, perhaps, that actually puts that formal piece in place to see if we can still salvage it. Is that what I'm really hearing? So we don't hold up everybody else's money?
Essentially, I think we need to agree on a short-term solution, and then we need to agree and come to consensus around a long-term solution that's responsible. And I think right now, without IPS present, without clarity around what that looks like, I think it would be to the benefit of the mayor's office, to the benefit of the board, and to the benefit of the students for us to have ironed that out in greater detail before making a determination one way or the other.
Okay, Dan, and then BJ.
There's, excuse me, there's basically three resolutions here. SIG funding, we're going to go forward as we said. Getting some kind of a task force on figuring out how we're going to operate Arlington next year is fine. If they can't come to some agreement, then we need the authority, CC staff, DOE staff, whatever, to go find out other option for these children. You can't wait till August 6th and find out this isn't going to work out. That won't work. The third part of the resolution is what I want to line out here. What I heard Deputy Mayor say is we discuss a responsible way to transition this. We do not make a commitment to a way today, but we make a commitment to a responsible way and a dialogue and figuring that out with parties at the table. But for us today to just say it's going back to IPS without that responsible way figured out, we cannot do. You know, when I say we, excuse me, I didn't mean to speak for you. I would not feel comfortable doing. But if we had those three things compartmentalized, I love clearing up the SIG funding because we don't want to hold schools up. I love the idea that you sit down with IPS and operate that school this year, make sure it's fully staffed, everything's rolling. I'm assuming you have teachers under contract and you're pretty much ready to go.
Working on that.
At this time of year, I assume so, because we didn't hear about this till later in May. I heard some talk of this. So then we have three parts, boom, boom, boom. The third part's going to take a lot of hard work and thinking through and being very responsible by all parties so that that neighborhood and those students and that school building becomes a vibrant operation again. And so I would be very committed to all three of those, but you just have to have some faith on that third part. We have to walk with the mayor's office. We have to walk with the department, with the board, and with IPS as a partnership and figure out what that responsible move is. So we just don't have a definitive one on that third. You just have to, we'd have to hold hands and go and keep the students in front of us.
Well, to be clear, the board can't reassign the kids. The kids are free to go wherever they choose to go, which is part of why we have this strange operational structural paradigm that we're trying to deal with. And so IPS has intimated that they could seat all of these kids, not such an overwhelming amount of students that they can't find them a place. Translation, they'll go back to IPS anyway. And so what are we left with? We're left with a building. And frankly, not just an expensive building to maintain, but a building that the taxpayers have spent about $20 million to renovate. That is empty, and instead of being an asset to the community, has become a liability to this particular community, as somebody has to defend this space from folks who would try to take advantage of it. And so I understand we want to study it, but in truth, Dan, I don't see how we aren't already on a pathway for this building, at least, to transition back to IPS, even if the students don't. It is not a flaw of the board. It is not about bad planning. It is about loopholes in the legislation that have been exploited.
The key is who's going to supervise that school this year? And we need to know that very soon, because you can't leave it to August 4th. That's my only point. I understand all the things you're saying. They're
Sure.
indisputable. But we need to know what's going to happen to those students soon,
Sure.
BJ?
not August 4th.
I guess that was my question to kind of answer it. Do we have a principal in place, and how many staffing positions are not filled currently?
We have a few teaching positions that are open, probably somewhere on the order of about 8 to 10. That is not unusual, neither for IPS or any other inner city school. This is not the place that folks choose to run right after they come out of undergraduate school, which is why we have such a presence from Teach for America and the New Teacher Project. And so we are where we generally are this time of year. We've been proceeding forward in good faith because we've been fighting to get this done. We're missing one piece, and while I understand that that piece gives some folks heartburn, the fact of the matter is, in my estimation, the way the law currently lays out, that piece is inescapable. Unless this board goes to the legislature to seek additional authority it does not currently have, that building is going to transition. And so under the circumstances, it can either transition in a very messy way, or it can transition in a way that is orderly, that everybody wins. And I mean everybody wins, especially those kiddos. And so while I understand how folks, I'm sorry, I did say we had a principal. Yeah. Same principal from last year, she's still there. And so while I understand the desire for a more deliberative process, I just think that ship has sailed. And not because we have been trying to withhold information from the board, but because we have been doggedly determined to make this work. And I'm telling you, if I had another way, I'd do it in a heartbeat, because I am connected. I felt something when I walked through that school and saw those kids being underserved. What I felt wasn't just righteous indignation, I felt fear because it was dangerous. Test scores aside, it's not a safe place for adults, much less the 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds we were walking into that building to be middle schoolers in a building designed for high school. We've arrested that. We've transformed that. And we now have a district, instead of putting up a hand and saying, go away, don't work, we don't want to work with you, we have a district that said, let's learn together. Let's figure this out. And so I feel like we can move quickly. I'm asking for this board to at least consider in a fast manner what that memorandum of understanding would look like. If you don't like it, don't vote for it. That's fine. If we didn't do our homework and our due diligence, if we can't persuade you and prevail, I get it. But I think the right thing to do is at least hear it. Because if we can get it done, it's something that everybody's going to be proud of, I believe, in the long term.
I don't think anyone's disagreeing with you, so I would just tell you you've got some work to do, and, you know, in an expedited fashion, I think, you know, all the parties can hopefully come together and get a resolution, but until that happens, you know, we can't do anything, I don't think.
So we need to vote on the petition.
Do we?
Yeah.
Yes, we need to vote on the SIG funds.
'Cause all
Up
the
or
others are
down.
held up if we don't. Nobody
We
gets
have
it.
to get
And
that
they need to
piece
know
done,
where they're
yeah.
going.
They,
Okay.
So
Do you need a motion?
we need a
Madam Chair?
motion, yes.
I don't know how to word it.
A motion to
Deny
deny,
the petition.
deny the,
Deny the
deny the petition. Do I have a second?
Second?
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Well, I have
Oh,
a question.
Andrea?
So, that doesn't alter the process?
No.
No, this is just first part. We have to take care of the SIG fund.
Roll call, please.
the motion's to deny. I just want to verify.
Yes, the motion's to deny
Deny
the
the
petition.
request.
To request more money.
Yes,
Okay. That's nothing to do with their
So a
plan.
yes vote will deny the funds.
yes.
That's correct.
But can I ask one more question, Superintendent, to
Yes.
you? Are the SIG funds still being held up because of Charter School USA?
Is their petition, I thought they withdrew. And so today I learned that they wanted to delay.
They didn't.
Oh,
do
theirs
that.
isn't for, oh,
just
that's
want
true, they
relief.
did not request any money, that is
So
true.
This should release them.
That is
Okay.
true.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Albert?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Dr. Freitas?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Ms. Neal?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Brien?
Yes.
Dr. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
I was trying to get someone's attention, but what's the motion?
The motion is to deny the petition for funding.
To deny it?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Superintendent Ritz?
Yes. Second motion. Second motion is to formalize a task group with the Mayor's Office, Department of Education, SBOE staff, Tinley, and IPS to work on a short-term solution for these students at Arlington for next year for Tinley, and to also begin to address transition and bring that plan back to this board.
Question. I would ask that in the motion, we have a date in which the MOU will come back to us. I'm very concerned about the students and not letting this go on. So what, Jason, what would be an appropriate date for coming back to either the full board or at least notifying us of what's planned?
I would think within a week to 2 weeks at the max.
Does that give both boards a chance to talk about that? Because you have two boards we're dealing with, not just this one.
The Tinley Board can have an emergency meeting. I cannot speak for the Board of School Commissioners.
Do they meet weekly?
They don't.
Okay.
I agree, I could not speak to the
That's the
IPS
problem with the
board.
time, I think.
Right. I just want to be sure we don't let it go on.
Oh, I agree.
Would 20 days be reasonable?
We have to resolve this within 20 days.
Soon, yeah, very
Yeah.
quickly.
Superintendent? Question?
Yes, Dan?
Thank you. while we're doing that, I would ask department, certainly board staff, to look at other options, because I don't want to come to a meeting in even 5 days, let alone 20 or August 4th, and find out we don't have a transition plan, and so you're kind of sitting there, what do we do now? So are there other, just let me complete,
ahead.
please. Are there other charters that'll move in? If you close the school, are there charters and places for these young people? Do you just I mean, I want to look at all the options why this is going on, because I don't want to get to the end and say, well, there's not really much of a transition plan, it's just going back, and really you don't have any option at this point. We better very quickly consult every other option, because I mean, I got a couple different messages today. The one I hope I heard is, we're going to operate that school next year. And Dr. Farabee is going to help us do it with the support of their board. And we're willing to work out a transition that's acceptable to good stewardship of a situation that was very bad, as you described, Marcus. And I applaud your courage going in there. And I applaud the progress. I sat at meetings at that building with community groups, if you want to know a little bit my interest and passion behind it. And parents and kids came into that auditorium, and it would put tears in your eyes that we have been jerked around enough. We get new administrators, new plans, new this. We want someone who'll come and really make this thing go. And our board made a commitment. And so if we figure out a transition plan, I want them to feel like, you know, someone didn't come in for a couple of years and wash their hands of them and say, now you're on your own. This board that went through that process, and others, I don't know if you were in the auditorium with me at those visits, this is a very serious matter to us, so I'm not being difficult to you or anybody. I want a rock solid plan. And if we can't get there, I want to have all my options on the table to do the very best by these kids and not drop them in August, okay? So that's as we work this out, I want every other option explored so we can do our very best by them, please.
So shall we set a date of July 18th? It's next Friday. Is that okay?
That's okay from the
All right.
perspective of our office.
So I add the date to the motion.
Right.
And so is there a second?
Can we reread the motion, please?
Sure, I have it written down.
Thank you.
The motion is to form the task force involving the mayor's office, the Department of Education, the State Board of Education staff, Tinley, and IPS to come together to talk about a short-term solution for the running of the school next year and a possible transition plan. And have that done by July 18th.
Thank you. Very well
Great,
done.
thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Albert?
Yes.
Mr. Elster?
Yes.
Dr. Freitas?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Ms. Neal?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Brien?
Yes.
Dr. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Superintendent Ritz?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Marcus.
Thanks, everybody.
Good luck.
I think we need just a few
That was a good
minutes
discussion.
break. So let's take just a really quick 10-minute recess. Come back at 2:25. 10 minutes.